How's it going, everybody? This is BeatTheBush. Today, I'm going to talk about how inflation is robbing everyone from behind. Before I begin, hit that like button. It only costs you one click, and I guarantee you, it's not going to wear out your mouse since it has a lifespan of 20 million clicks. Like. This video is brought to you by Webull. Get your 2 free shares of stock value between $11 and $2,300 just for signing up and depositing just 1 penny. In addition, if you want to get $5 of free Shiba Inu, just trade $1 worth of cryptocurrency. This is a great way to get in on cryptocurrency because you're not spending any of your money. If you guys are interested, check out my referral link down in the video description below. So you're trying to figure out your retirement numbers, and usually people use about 2% for inflation. On average, over the last 30 years, you can expect to have about 8% gain per year if you invest in the S&P 500. You do some quick math and you should have 6% left over even after inflation. So you withdraw 4% for retirement, which is the 4% rule, and everything works because you're withdrawing less than your market gains. But where do we actually get this 2% inflation number from? It's usually the CPI. What happens if the things that you actually buy is actually inflating by 4 to 6% every single year? If this is the case, the retirement numbers all breaks down. If you look at the graph that they generate, CPI does indeed look like it hovers around 2%. If you look at the last measured point, which is September 2021, it measures at 5.4%. It spiked up a bit, but the Fed says this is transitionary and it's going to gradually fall back down around 2%. Okay, let's just believe this for now, but CPI is a bit more insidious than this. In order to understand why CPI is the way it is, we have to know where it is used. CPI is used to determine the real GDP of a country. So in that sense, the government has a kind of incentive to reduce CPI so that it would artificially push up GDP. Why do you want GDP to be high? Because it shows the strength of a country. It's producing a lot. CPI is also used to determine real investment returns. If you make 10% in the market this year, you're not really making 10% because there's inflation. Social Security and TIPS, which is Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, both of these are linked to CPI. So if you have a lower CPI, you end up having to pay less Social Security out. The TIPS payout, as a result of lower CPI, it's also lower. Lower CPI eventually means lower government spending. I don't have this whole conspiracy theory where people are conspiring to lower the CPI or anything, but the determination of CPI affects a lot of real world payments. When there is so much power, there could be a little bit of fudging going on. And when the CPI does not really reflect the real world CPI, it actually erodes your buying power. Most people don't feel the effects of inflation. It's only going up a few percent every single year, kind of like how you slowly boil a lobster alive and it's not even gonna move. This is fine. Going back to the CPI graph, I certainly don't think it's 5.4% for me personally. Healthcare alone, which is a major spending for most people, has gone up about 18% every single year for the past 5 years. For T-bone steaks, I buy these in bulk in a value pack and they generally cost $6 a pound if I wait for a sale. If I do the same thing today, it's $7.99 a pound. This is a 33% increase in just the past 2 years. So how is the Bureau of Labor Statistics able to fudge these CPI numbers just to make them artificially lower somehow? Somewhere along the line, there's a switch of how they calculate the CPI from a basket of items to cost of living method. The basket of items method is pretty hard to fudge because you just take a bunch of items that people normally use and you weigh them differently. Then every time you want to measure the CPI, you look at how much it costs on the market. But no, the problem with this is it doesn't allow anyone to add in any fudge factors to kind of move the numbers around a little bit. The new cost of living calculation allows substitution of one item for another without changing the percentage of the CPI. Now you can make up any way of why you want to do this. The way they put it sounds very plausible and reasonable, which is to change it according to consumer preferences. Whatever the consumer prefers at the time, maybe you want some other kind of steak, not a T-bone steak, then they would switch that over and all of a sudden maybe it might cost differently, more or less, but then the CPI is going to stay the same. How does this make sense? Let me give a simplistic example over here, which is Chilean sea bass. I used to be able to buy this for about $12.99 a pound, but now the cheapest you can get it for is $19.99 a pound. This is an inflation of well over 50% in just a year or two. Now, I have a lot of examples of different foods that I stopped eating as much because it raised in price. In this instance, it's also the case because I am opting to eat something else because that item is too expensive. Now, let's just say, for example, my preference, instead of eating this really expensive fish, I switch to something a little bit cheaper, a little bit more reasonable, which is a salmon at $9.99 a pound. In my view, I am just switching to whatever is most cost efficient, whatever is most in season. If certain products skyrockets in price, I'm gonna try to avoid them. But if the CPI does this substitution from Chilean sea bass to salmon, the CPI changes by 0%. Now, does this make sense? My standard of living could be argued to have fallen because I am no longer eating this preferential fish. Now I'm paying a slightly lower price, but you can't really say that this is a consumer preference change. I'm changing because things are increasing in price. Taken to an extreme, let's just say all the food skyrockets, right? It goes up by 100%, 1000%, except corn. All of a sudden, the entire United States have to eat corn and only corn because it's only 99 cents a pound. CPI could technically say, okay, the consumer preference has all of a sudden changed to eating corn. So we're gonna swap that in. And again, CPI would not move at all. Quality of life goes to zero and CPI stays the same. On the other hand, changing how you calculate CPI based on consumer preference has a little bit of merit. A possible example could be you no longer using gasoline because you bought an EV car. If you have an electric car, you're no longer gonna buy gasoline. So you can say your consumer preference has changed to purchasing electricity instead. So in this case, it doesn't make sense to keep gasoline as part of CPI. However, how are you going to do this? Because it's not going to be 100% conversion all of a sudden. It's going to be a gradual change where more and more people have electric cars. The problem here is if you change the calculations around, there leaves too much up for interpretation. No matter how you calculate CPI, it's not going to be a perfect measurement of inflation. It certainly won't match every single person's total cost of increase. But in the end, I think most people would agree that the current calculation of CPI, it's way off. So in short, the original method of calculation is less prone to manipulation. This is called the Williams method, which is basically the original method of CPI calculation of a basket of items. And if you want to calculate CPI more correctly for your retirement plans, this matters a lot because it could mean the success of your retirement plan versus a failure when inflation inflates away your buying power and all of a sudden your standard of living just kind of trickles down one step at a time, a little bit more, a little bit more. So you want to protect against this, you really have to know what the realistic CPI is for you yourself. Let's just say it's a lot higher than 2% for most people. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit more about CPI as I have in researching for this video. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.